Hi, this is Andrea. In this video I'm going to be making the Coronation Quiche for King Charles III's coronation. The recipe popped up online and we thought this sounds yum. I'm a big fan of quiche, nice flavour combinations, and since this is a gluten-free, dairy-free household, I'm going to be trying to make it with all those safe ingredients for us. Let's get started. So in this bowl I'm just blending 125 grams of flour and 25 grams of lard and 25 grams of butter. I use this particular butter, which is actually just like a generic supermarket own brand margarine basically. It's just got like vegetable oils in it, and I think most of the supermarkets have them. It's a little bit cheaper than buying something that says dairy free on it sometimes, and I find it perfectly adequate. It does us for on toast and in sandwiches and baking and cooking and that kind of thing. So that's my preference for that. And the flour that I have in here, I was umming and ahhing about this, but because honestly gluten-free pastry is just, I find it really hard. I don't know about anybody else, but it's really tricky. I can never get it right. It either comes out squeaky, and people always laugh at me when I say that, but genuinely, if you know, you know, it's squeaky, or it's just really delicate, really sticky, really hard to work with. You can't possibly roll it out. It's just a bit of a nightmare, to be honest. And so I really ummed and ahed about what kind of flour to use for this pastry and how to actually do it. And what I came up with was kind of what does it work out at? 1/5 corn flour, because I've been reading that actually that's quite good for adding a bit of stability to gluten-free baking. It kind of makes it a bit more pliable, I think, in the finished result, and I don't know whether maybe because it's really fine it kind of adds a bit of lift and stuff. And also the other 4/5 is oat flour, which I actually ground myself from a bag of gluten-free oats in my NutriBullet blender. So it came out kind of almost a more wholemeal-y consistency, which may not work at all, I don't know. But anyway, here we find ourselves. We have this bowl, it's coming on. I'm just mashing it together like any regular pastry. I don't have one of those pastry cutter things, so I just use a fork. And you're kind of pressing it down together. The butter and the lard was nice and cold and hard, which is always what you're going for with pastry. I should have added my other ingredients into this first, but I'm sure it will be fine. It's only some salt, I think. Yeah, salt, that's all I missed. So I'm sure it will distribute well enough afterwards. So yeah, it's coming along to look like breadcrumbs. I think, getting a feel with my fingers, I think that's pretty much done. I think that's all the flour's coated. So we'll shake in a little bit of salt, just to kind of pinch. Get that all mixed round. I did debate as well whether to add a bit of baking powder to this, because I found some success in using some kind of rising agent in gluten-free pastry before. That tends to produce a softer result, but we will see what happens. There we have our dry mixture. Now we add 2 tablespoons, the recipe says, of milk. Now I'm using homemade plant milk, which is cashew this week, but you could use any plant milk that you usually use. It will work just fine. It's just moisture to add it to bind it together. You could use water if you want to. I'll probably add some more water if I end up needing any more. Yeah, I think that's probably going to need a bit more, but we'll see how it goes. Because again, gluten-free flours tend to, oh yeah, look at that. We need, I don't know, it's coming together a bit. Okay, right, let's grab some water then. Okay, so I'm just going to add a tiny drop at a time because you don't want it to end up too wet. And it's really easy to add too much, even with really absorbing flour. I honestly haven't used oat flour for pastry before. I did a tiny experiment with it a few months ago and didn't get around to coming back to it, so I'm really interested to see how this goes. Might need to start getting in there with my hands to have a good feel now. So how's that doing? Ooh, interesting. Yeah, it's kind of clinging together a little bit more in a way that you might be familiar with. That seems quite a small block to fit my tin, but we'll see what happens. So I guess the thing to do here is dust the work surface. I'm quite nervous about this part. I'm pretty nervous about this because normally gluten-free flour doesn't roll out. So we may end up having to abandon this and just press it into the tin, but we'll see what happens. Just dust a little bit onto the rolling pin here, not that it really clings on with a plastic one. So let's see, how does this work? Whoops. Yeah, so it's pretty much the same as a normal gluten-free crust then. Right, we will go to plan B. So plan B is put it into the tin and press it out. So let's see how that goes. So the recipe, as far as I can remember, said a really thin crust. So we want it really, really thin. Like, I guess only just thick enough to not have holes in, maybe. And you can probably tell by my voice, this is quite a stiff pastry. So it's quite tricky to push out. However, this is quite refreshing. I'm enjoying this new pastry so far because, as I've said, normally my attempts at gluten-free pastry are so delicate that you really can't do anything with them, and that is annoying. Just patching in a couple of holes. Let's really push this out. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I'm just really pushing it tightly against the edge of the tin. You can feel the tin through it, but just under the surface, if that makes sense. So you know that you're not going all the way through. In some places you'll find you do go all the way through, but that's okay because you can patch some bits in a minute. You're going to have a couple of little bits spare, not tons. I think we're only just going to have enough to make this, ironically. And there was I with a spare tin standing by in case I had loads left over, because that's usually the way it happens when I make things like this. I don't want to handle this too much more because, you know, it's just going to get sticky and fall apart. I don't really know what to do about making this edge look nice. I may just have to trim it off later, or it may just have to be a rustic edge. Now I'm just going to have a good feel of the bottom, make sure I haven't got any giant thick bits. That's turned into a giant thick bit. Let's take that spare piece out. I mean, this is good measurements that this recipe's given, I must say, because it's pretty accurate. Normally, as I say, you end up with pastry, certainly I do, with a bunch of it left over. So honestly, this is pretty refreshing. So I'm just going around the edge now and really making sure that it's pressed into that kind of right angle bit where the bottom of the pan here goes into like a, what do you call it, like a, not corner is it, but you know what I mean, right into the edge there. Okay, now I think, I mean, this is going to be super thin in some places, paper thin almost, and we'll have to hope for the best. Now it does say to blind bake it, and I've never done this, I don't think, with gluten-free before. But what we need to do is get some baking paper. So just really carefully pressing that in, not too hard so as to make any holes. And then I'm going to put rice in mine because I don't have any baking beans. guessing that's enough. Just to kind of cover the bottom, and it like weighs it down to stop it from rising anywhere. Now with my rice inside, it will go in the oven. Don't be alarmed by the state of this jug, it's just the line scale marks on the outside from the dishwasher. Sorry about that. Okay, up to about there, just before the 300 mark. Okay. I suppose I might just as well mix it in here really, because and then it will pour easier. So then we go for eggs. And our pinch of salt and pepper, wasn't it? I like things that are peppery. Yum. There we go, let's do a little sprinkle. Another little sprinkle of salt. This will help enhance the cheesy flavour, so I'm going to put plenty of salt because vegan cheese doesn't tend to have that kind of salty kick to it that cow's milk cheddar does. Just giving this all a mix. This is a nice consistency. Just making sure all the yolk and everything is blended in. I did have a quick look at this. Now, as far as I can see, there are like woody stalks, like it's rosemary, isn't it, that has woody bits. So that's really tough. So I don't think we use that bit. So I'm just going to pull off the leaves. Okay. So I guess I'll just kind of grab a bunch and with my really sophisticated equipment, I will just trim it into little pieces. So now we have our little container full of little chopped pieces of tarragon. I probably could do that a lot finer, but I like it kind of coarse, so we'll give that a go. So this is the cheese I'll be using. I pretty much interchange between a lot of different brands. The Vitalite one's really nice. They do a bunch of different ones now. Which one do I really like lately? Nourish have a mozzarella block. That's really nice. It really melts nicely on like pizzas and things. You just grate it on. It's in a hard block like a lot of the vegan cheeses, and that's really tasty. But they didn't have that this time, so I got this one. This one melts pretty nicely as well. It's quite it's not so plasticky feeling as some of them. I got a tin of broad beans because broad beans is not something that I use really in the house. I'm not a big beanie fan. I don't think any of us in this house are, so we don't buy them much. So I just got a tin because I thought that would probably be easiest, and they're pretty much cooked, aren't they, in a tin, so kind of eliminated a little bit of the work there as well. And also I've got some frozen spinach, frozen chopped spinach. This is about, I want to say maybe 6 or 7 blocks. I don't think I'll end up using all of it. We'll see how much goes in there. I defrosted it, left it in this colander for a good few hours, gave it a good squeeze out to get all the moisture out, because you know how watery spinach can be. So what was the order of this? It wanted a bit of cheese. This pack is 200 grams and it said 100, so I think a good handful in both cases. So a sprinkle of cheese on the bottom. I think as well, if you want this extra cheesy and you're making it dairy free, then you can add some nutritional yeast here. That would give a little extra cheesy kick, I think. Okay, I think I'm going to put in like a couple of good spoonfuls, maybe a little more to do a proper layer. That's it, a nice smoothed out spinach layer. Lovely, fairly even. Okay, I think that's good. And then broad beans. I'm just gonna shake some in. Do I be super brave and just put loads in, even though I don't like them much? I guess I've kind of got to, haven't I? I've got to give it a proper try. There we we go then, a nice layer of broad beans. Now it said about a tablespoon of chopped, didn't it? I'd say that's about that anyway, isn't it? So let's just chop on how much seems right. I think that's probably good, although you do want it to be pretty strong over the rest of the flavours in there, don't you? So there we go. Then the liquid mixture, so we bring this back in from over here, give it another little whisk, pour it over nice and carefully so that we don't disturb all the ingredients too much. I don't know if I'm going to fill this all the way up because quiche always kind of overflows, doesn't it? So I think I'm going to leave that there. So I have got a bit left over in there. And then it said the rest of the cheese on top. So about another handful, I suppose. But I think I will be fairly generous here. After all, a quiche is supposed to be cheesy, isn't it? So yeah, I'm going for probably closer to 200 grams. Probably just my paranoia that all the other ingredients might be a bit scary because I don't really use them. I mean, spinach I use, but it said 25 minutes, so we shall see. So, time to get it out and have a look. It's been 25 minutes. And here it is. Now that's fairly well set. And as much as it hasn't really browned, I don't think I want to leave it in for any longer because otherwise I think it's going to get a bit tough. So, there we are. We'll wait for it to cool off and then we'll try some. So I'm joined by Jamie now to do a taste test of the finished product.
Well, it looks good. I'm not sure what the actual Coronation Quiche is supposed to look like, but certainly...
No, I mean, you can see all the layers. It's a little bit messy because we had to cut it when it was still warm. So right. It would look a lot neater if we'd been able to cut it when it was cold and fully set, like firm. So it is a little bit messy, but no, you can see all the different layers in there of the different components. You've got the spinach there and the beans, and then the quiche layer on top, and then cheese.
Well, you can taste the cheese. That's the definite first kind of flavour profile I'm getting.
Interesting. I don't think anything's too overpowering in there.
No.
You get the spinach. Obviously you get the broad bean. But for me, I'm not a beanie person. It's not over beanie.
No, when you said that it had broad beans in it, I was slightly worried because I'm not the biggest broad bean fan. And I think many people out there were worried that there was this ingredient in there that isn't the greatest.
I have to say,
for a lot of people,
the pastry is fairly crisp. So that experiment has turned out quite nicely. I'm pretty pleased with that. It's kind of held up quite well. It's only because it's still warm that it's a bit soft, but actually it's kind of holding together on this bit. This is quite good. I'm pleased with that. That bite looks good.
It does. Thanks very much. I'm not the biggest quiche fan, but that is really nice. Nice combination of things. I'm not sure, we haven't tried much of the crust. That's nice and crunchy. as it should be.
Not like the usual squeaky
No,
gluten-free pastry.
no. And we've had a fair bit of that over the time. No, that is really tasty.
Yeah,
Well
I'm
done.
impressed. I'm impressed with that flavour. Very balanced, and you get the little tarragon in there, but not like overpowering. I put loads in. I was a bit worried. I put like, yeah, it seemed like loads. I think it was the right amount, but it was nice. Very nice.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very well done. And I'm sure there will be many people who require gluten-free or even dairy-free might even give this a go.
I hope so. It's nice. Give it a try.